Hello, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you enjoyed last week, and I hope that you're going to continue to sew along with us as we do a wall hanging. Last week we learned how to take a jelly roll and put it into strips and then cut those into squares, which are going to be the blocks that we're going to make and piece together tonight for the second part of the tutorial on making the wall hanging. I also had mentioned for you to have maybe a contrasting fabric that you wanted to use as well that you could use for something else, and so I'm going to show you some ideas on that. So for tonight, you're going to want to gather all of those blocks that you cut from the first episode, and also if you have a blank that you want to use, I'm going to just give you some ideas from some other tutorials that I have done that you can use for putting it together. And don't worry, if this is the first time you're watching a video and you missed the first video, it's not too late. You can just go back, do the first video, make the strips, cut those out into your blocks, and then come back and pick up on this one. And let's get started. So we are going to now talk about some options for designing what you want to have for a decorative block. And you don't have to have just one. You can have more than one if you want to organize it that way. So this was one of the extra appliques that I had from a previous tutorial where we did the mug rugs. And so all I did for this was I took one jelly roll strip that I had in a solid color, and I just flipped it right sides together, and I just sewed that down one side, and then I trimmed it to be even with the bottom of the block. I flipped it right sides together again, did another 1/4 inch seam, trimmed it, and continued until I had made it all the way around the entire block. So this just framed in a smaller block to make it match the size of the ones that we would have made for a jelly roll. So that is a tip for you. If you need to make a block the same size, you can use jelly roll strips and just sew a strip all the way around the block and then put whatever square size on top of that and trim it down to match the size block that you've made for everything else. So applique is one of your options that you can do, and I have several videos where I have done applique examples, and you can go back if you need to see how to do that on one of those videos. Just to show you some other ones that I have done just for ideas. And this one, of course, could be something really cute for the fall right now. But people love to go camping. I know I have family that loves to camp, even my children. And this little camper was one that I started. Now, this has been placed on a block, but I haven't actually done the stitching yet because I've just done it as a piece. But this could be a very cute center block if you were doing something that was a camping theme for your block. Of course, in the summertime, I love strawberries, and so even something like a strawberry applique project would be cute for a center block. And so, again, I had made multiple blocks throughout the summer because I had plans to actually put together a quilt, and I actually had these appliques, and I just had already made these. And so these are just some ideas for some ways that you can just utilize the blocks and make different things. I also had done a block just that had a chair in the middle that I was going to coordinate with some other fabrics just for something different. But what I have decided to do for my project tonight was hand embroidery. So I actually, while you guys were working on getting your strips cut, I was working on getting my center block ready, and I decided that for my wall hanging, I wanted to do a hand embroidered little owl. It just seemed to fit the season, and it was just the perfect color scheme to just go with what fabrics I had cut out. And so this is the one I'm going to be using. So your challenge for this next week is to figure out what kind of block you want for the center. Once you figure that out, again, whether it's applique, hand embroidery, or maybe you have fabric that's already got a print on it and you just want to center like one print, like a big flower or something, and just cut out that same size square and just have it as a focal point. There are so many things that you can do. If you do not hand embroider, but you're interested in that, I do have a tutorial also where I showed you guys how to go about doing that a few weeks ago. So you can go back through my video links and find that so that you can just see how that works. I can also put links to the previous videos that would relate to some applique or some hand embroidery in my descriptions for you as well. So once you decide what kind of center block you want to have, the next part is figuring out how you want to lay out your quilt blocks. And I have several different blocks that are the same, so I like to just rearrange them and coordinate them different ways. So for example, I could go horizontally with mine, or I could go vertically, but I'm going to choose to do 9 blocks for my particular wall hanging. So that means I'm going to need 3 that are aligned across the middle, and the middle one will be your focal block. And then I'm going to cross the opposite direction of my rows so that it gives it a little character or a little texture. But I also don't want to use the same print sets that I've made. So I'm going to use this one, which is a little contrast, as a block next to one that I do that's vertical. And the main thing is just figuring out what you like and determining how you want to rotate things or flip things around so that you can just get the layout that is appealing to you, and just kind of alternate what you're using so that it's, you know, scrappy, because that was what I'm going for. Now you may want yours coordinated a little bit better or differently, and that's fine. But you just want to get your blocks, just figure out a pattern that you like, directions that you want things to turn, and just start laying out your blocks until you get an idea for the kind of quilt pattern that you want. And so for mine, I am just going to keep laying these out until I get a pattern. And once I decide that the way I have it laid out is the way I want to put it all together, then I'm going to start piecing my blocks. And again, it doesn't matter what you do. You can just turn them different ways, figure out the way that you like the best. These are going the same direction, so if you don't like that, you can change it up again. Just do it however you want to do it. You could even make it where it doesn't match at all. So for example, you could even do it so that you have 2 that go sideways over here, and then you have these opposite, or you can turn it so that these go the same, and then you can just rotate the other blocks to get a different look. So it really doesn't matter. Again, that's why it's a beautiful project, because you get to choose how you want things to go and how you want things to look when you put it all together. So I think I want mine to alternate each time, and I think I like what I have pretty much laid out. So once I have decided how I want it to look and I have it completely laid out, I am going to sew a row across at a time. And I'm going to show you how to do that with my pieces for the next part of this tutorial. So I'm going to start with the top row, and I'm going to sew right sides together by taking my center block and just laying it over onto the first block for that row. And we are going to take this to the sewing machine, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam right down this side. Once this 1/4 inch seam is finished, we will open this back up. I do recommend that you press it. We'll open it back up and it will be sewn together. And then you're going to take the third one and lay it over onto the middle piece, and also you will sew your 1/4 inch seam down the side. So take your first row of blocks the way you want them to lay out and just go ahead and stitch your first row across. So you are going to take, this is your first block, and you want to take your center block and you want to pick it up and fold it over onto the first block on the row, and then you want to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down this block. And don't necessarily worry about back stitching for this, and the reason is a lot of times when you're piecing a quilt top together, you will end up having to trim to get everything straight anyway. So typically if you did back stitch, you would probably end up cutting off some of that back stitch. So typically quilters don't always back stitch unless it's going to be at the end of something that's going to be permanent. So if you want to back stitch, you can. Sometimes I do, but usually if I know it's going to be trimmed, I don't. Okay, so this is going to be my first and my second block together for the row. And what I'm going to do is open this up. So I have my left block, my center block, and this is going to be my third block. So I'm just going to now put it where it would go, and then I'm just going to flip it over onto the center block, and we're going to get our edges lined up. You don't have to pin here because these are small pieces. If you prefer just to keep it together, you can. Sometimes I do, but usually these are easy enough to manage. But if you wanted to pin it, at least in the middle, just for you to make sure it's aligned, then you could. So again, you're just going to go ahead and sew this with a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. And this is going to make your first section that you need for a row. And you're going to do this method for all 3 rows. So go from left to right and sew all 3 blocks together. And then I'm going to show you how to do each row to the next row. So when you finish, this is going to be your first row. So you're going to do your center block as a row, and then you're going to do your third one, and then I'm going to show you how to piece your rows together. So this is how it's going to look once you sew a row of strips together. So this was the first, second, and third block. Okay, so once you sew a block to each one to make your row, then you're just going to continue doing this for all of them. So this is actually my bottom one. So I have put together now my top row to my center row, and we're going to attach this one to the bottom. Now we're going to have our whole entire top part of our wall hanging pieced together. So what you will do is take the row above. So for example, I took row 2 and flipped it up onto row 1, and I have sewn my 1/4 inch seam right down the entire row. Then you open it back up just like we did before, and now we're going to take the bottom row and we're going to flip it right sides together, and we are going to sew a 1/4 inch seam across this row to make the entire quilt block for the whole entire top of your wall hanging. So I do recommend that when you're doing this part that you go ahead and put some pins in it. If you are trying to align your vertical seams, then you'll want to try to make sure that when you pin it, that you mesh these 2 seams together. If yours is not going to be where it matches the seams, then that's perfectly fine. Mine, I wanted a little scrappy, so I'm not necessarily concerned about my seams matching for this project, but I would be if I were doing something that was going to be not as scrappy as what I've chosen. So you are just going to go back to the sewing machine and sew this exactly like we did individual blocks. Now you just have what looks like a longer rectangle of a block to piece. All right, welcome back. I hope that you've enjoyed the project. Look how cute this turned out to be. I am so excited about finishing this with you guys, and I can't wait to see what kinds of ideas you had and what kind of projects. So please share, tag me on Instagram, and let me know what you've made. I'd love to see pictures of it. Again, thank you for coming back for the second part of the tutorial. The third tutorial, we are going to add the batting, and we're going to talk about options for how you could quilt the top and go ahead and put it together so that you can actually hang this on your wall and enjoy it for the season. Don't forget to like and subscribe and even share my channel. I love to see how it's growing, and I want you to come back and be ready for the next thing. So thank you for joining me.